We've got Omeed Malik, who is doing incredible work in the capitalist business space as it pertains to not being crazy, woke, insane business practices. And I wanted to let him explain to all of you what he's doing with Public Square and so many other different companies out there. Omeed, I think you're a lot like me in that you're around both mine and Buck's ages, but you look around and from a business perspective, would you have ever believed that Bud Light would be giving cans with the pictures on them to Dylan Mulvaney, and that you'd go to watch a superhero movie and it would, like, Marvel all of a sudden has to have trans superheroes who have lesbian parents? I mean, I don't know how we ever ended up here.
Well, a lot of it is it's actually you got to follow the money. Just like when we find ourselves in the twilight zone, why are we in the twilight zone?
Yeah.
As it relates to the movies, though, I like to ask the question: in the last 20 years, when's the last movie you saw that was negative about China or the CCP? We make our movies to sell to them, and then we take out all that transgender stuff, and then they bring TikTok over here, and they push all that stuff on our kids, and the app over there tells them to study and shuts down after a couple hours. So this is the kind of stuff people with our backgrounds need to expose. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I've just gotten sick of it. I'm a parent now. And for people like us who have the ability, whether you guys in media or me in finance, don't do something about it, how are we going to look our kids in the eyes and say that we didn't stop this? Because, look, you guys are passionate about this too. COVID radicalized me. I mean, what I saw there, the lies, the censorship. I mean, I moved from New York to Florida for freedom, and I started really seeing why federalism matters. You have different economic and political systems. New York and California, the failed model versus, Texas or Florida. But then what I started seeing was the battlefield's not just around policy. It's going to be about economics. That's how they get us with social credit scores, is the government uses big tech companies and other big companies to control us. And I wasn't going to let that happen. So my mission now is to finance these companies that are going to keep us free.
Omeed, Buck, good to have you with us. And I wanted you to take this opportunity to just tell all the folks listening across the country about where some of the places are that we're already building. They're familiar with, Rumble, for example. They're familiar with Truth Social. But give us kind of an update on how the parallel and really just the truly capitalist economy and a conservative values accepted economy is going at this point. Like, where are we racking up some progress and some momentum?
The first thing is it's the top of the first, right? We are just getting started here. ESG started becoming a phrase in 2010 and has become a multi-trillion-dollar scam, okay? It also destroys economic value, but it's really used in order to control us, as I was saying. As it relates to this parallel economy that you referenced, we call it the EIG economy. So we mean entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth. And yes, we have our own acronym against ESG. It's EIG. This ecosystem basically has three buckets that we invest in through our fund, 1789 Capital, which is the vehicle that gave Tucker Carlson his money to get his new company started up that we've spoken about. The first bucket is exactly what you're saying, Buck. It's the replication businesses. You have an existing company that's co-opted or has gone totally woke, and we need a response to that. So yes, you have Rumble, which is a response to YouTube, Black Rifle Copy, a response to Starbucks. The company we took public, Public Square, that I now sit on the board of, which is a response to Amazon. But that's going to continue in every part of our economy. We need our own payment processors. When you see PayPal fining people for what they determine is misinformation, we need our own banks. When you see the truckers up in Canada lose their bank accounts because they want to protest these unnecessary vaccine mandates, right? Or asset managers like Vivek was doing with Strive. So that's the replication economy. We're going to need to make sure that we're insulated so we cannot get canceled in the private sector so they deperson us. So all that stuff has to happen, and that's all areas that we're investing in and have helped companies like Public Square go public, or Tucker, which is a response to cable news. The second bucket of EIG is how do we enhance American prosperity? How are we investing in like defense tech? We've already made an investment in a company called Firehawk in Texas. They develop rocket fuel cheaper than the competitors for missiles? How are we investing in things that are going to onshore manufacturing? Don't continue to make us totally dependent and get all of our stuff from China, who's our enemy. And then finally, bucket three, there's a lot of great companies out there that ESG has ruined because the ESG overlords tell us we're not going to give them any money because they're bad. I'm thinking things in fossil fuels, ammunition, guns. I'm going to go invest in those companies because they're great businesses that have really good financial profiles, but they can't even get a loan from a bank. Those are the three buckets we're going to play in what we call EIG, which is going to fight back against ESG.
I agree with everything you're doing. And I think this is really, really important. And I think increasingly our audience wants to be able to spend money with companies that respect them. It's one thing if these companies decided, hey, we're going to spend money across the entire political spectrum, and we want every Republican, we want every Democrat, we want everybody to be buying our product. They're not doing that. Why do you think that is ultimately? Because everything you're saying, I agree with. I think it does create, instead of being angry about it, I think the best way to deal with anger, I did it when I started my company, Outkick, is to actually create an alternative, right? Go out and use entrepreneurial spirit to take advantage of marketplace opportunities. But why do you think this marketplace opportunity exists? Why do you think, I'm just throwing, Disney. Why would Disney not be trying to appeal to every parent, regardless of what their politics are? That feels like the Disney that I grew up with, or Coke, or Bud Light. Why do you think they're making these choices?
Well, I think it's several reasons. I mean, one is just like an economic thing. Let's use the New York Times, for example. Did it always kind of lean slightly left? Yes, but we're around the same age. It wasn't like it is today in the 90s or even in the 2000s, right? The reason why the New York Times is not even readable anymore is because it moved from a advertising general model to a subscription-based model.
Yes.
So the majority of the revenue of the New York Times or any of these outlets that are supposedly news now is based on subscribers. And what that means is we lend ourselves to the red meat of who our purchases are, who's paying that $8.99 a month. And so they're only appealing to Brooklyn and the West Coast for the people who are their subscribers. That's where they get all their revenue from. And now the New York Times is actually wants to be, by their own admission, an entertainment business, right? They're not really reporting news. They're trying to give the type of content that their subscribers want. So that's how you start to see the problem. And then also you end up having what we have now, which is this tyranny of the minority, which is these crazy movements that have really sprouted up basically that coincide to the election of Donald Trump. Now, it's extremely nefarious why all of these things have started happening. What I believe to be the case is that around 2015, you had two populist movements taking place on both the left and the right. And you remember it was Bernie Sanders, who they stole the election from through the DNC, on one side, and of course Donald Trump on the other side. I think that freaked the hell out of the establishment, the oligarchs, whatever you want to call them, but we know who they are. And I believe that has been promoted by the media and other propaganda tools at the behest of the government and the establishment to try to divide us. And it's going on throughout all of human history. My family's from the Middle East. I know a lot about sectarian violence that's being done by the hands of the people who are in charge to get other people to fight each other. That's why they want men and women to hate each other, blacks and whites to hate each other. And you've really seen this being fueled really since the election of Trump. And it's all for a particular purpose. And so that then lends itself even further to the economic decisions about some of the companies you're referencing. Sorry that this is so complicated, but it really is this nefarious and detailed, because otherwise, to your point, it's illogical. Then asset managers controlled by only three entities that control all these large public companies, whether it's BlackRock, Vanguard, then also have their own agendas. And then they take the state pension money, which is only recently, as you guys know, with Florida and others, starting to divest from it. And then they control the economic decisions on the boards of these large companies. So that's kind of a very, very brief synopsis of where this comes from, how it's economically motivated. And yeah, it's totally different from how we grew up when Michael Jordan says he doesn't talk about politics because Republicans buy sneakers too. I've quantified the opportunity here for you guys, though, right at the outset when I started doing this. I just looked at, okay, just the people that voted for Donald Trump, that's 73 million people. And the Brookings Institute told me that that's 30% of American GDP. So that's like the lowest amount of money. That's $7 trillion of GDP that we all know are pissed off, being ignored and alienated by these big companies. That would be the third largest economy in the world. So you better believe I'm going to do everything I can to be the financier for these people, because I don't care that it's only 30% of GDP. It's still the third largest economy in the world, and they're ready to stop giving their money to people that hate them. The last thing I'll say is a perfect example of what you're referencing. Salesforce, you know, the CRM that pretty much every business uses. It's owned by a guy named Mark Benioff, who owns now Time Magazine, and he's the guy that funded E. Jean Carroll's lawsuit against Donald Trump. So every time people buy one of these products or use these things that they think are innocuous, you are literally funding not just people that don't like you, who take your money and then try to hurt you and hurt the people that you want in power. That's how serious this is. So it's not about boycotts. That's not effective. You have to then create businesses, services, and products for people to be positive so we can actually effectuate change. And that's literally as American as apple pie, because it's capitalism. We need to give people choices.
Omeed Malik, founder of 1789 Capital. Omeed, we're going to have you to come back and update us on how the parallel economy and true capitalism is working over time, and talk to you about the economy in the election year too. So thanks for making the time for us today. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Really appreciate connecting with you guys, and thanks for all that you do.